You got fat. 4 careless words were all it took to stop an entire supermarket aisle. But no one noticed the tiny heartbeat that answered from within her, and hundreds of miles away, an immortal king suddenly rose from his throne with a hand pressed against his chest. 24 hours earlier, Amelia Carter's alarm rang at 4:30 a.m., long before the sun reached the rooftops of Portland. She silenced it before it could wake the elderly woman sleeping in the next room and slowly pushed herself out of bed. Her small apartment was quiet except for the hum of an aging refrigerator and the steady rain tapping against the window. She smiled faintly as she rested both hands over the gentle curve beneath her oversized sweatshirt. "Just one more day," she whispered. "We'll get through one more day together." The tiny movement beneath her palm felt almost like an answer, warm and reassuring despite everything life had thrown at her. Amelia worked 2 jobs, one at a neighborhood bakery before sunrise and another stocking shelves at a grocery store during the evening. Every dollar mattered now. Doctor appointments, vitamins, rent, utilities, and the growing list of things a baby would someday need filled the notebook she carried everywhere. She crossed out expenses with careful handwriting, always searching for another way to save a few dollars. Her coworkers assumed she had simply gained weight from stress. The loose sweatshirts, oversized aprons, and quiet smiles helped hide the truth. Questions invited sympathy, gossip, and judgment. Silence was easier. The bakery smelled of fresh cinnamon rolls and warm bread as she arranged pastries behind the glass display before customers arrived. Her manager thanked her for never calling in sick. Amelia simply nodded. She couldn't afford to miss a shift. Outside, commuters hurried through the drizzle carrying expensive coffee cups while she calculated whether buying herself breakfast would leave enough money for bus fare home. She chose the bus every time. During her lunch break, she sat alone on a wooden bench overlooking the river, carefully unwrapping half a peanut butter sandwich she had packed from home. She watched families walk by, children laughing beneath colorful umbrellas, and wondered what kind of mother she would become. Fear visited her often, but hope refused to leave. She gently touched her stomach again. "Your dad doesn't even know you're here," she murmured softly. Maybe that's for the best. She wasn't angry anymore. Time had worn the sharp edges from old heartbreak, leaving only quiet acceptance. The father of her child belonged to a night she still couldn't fully explain, a night filled with impossible memories she had convinced herself must have been a dream born from exhaustion and grief. Sometimes she remembered silver eyes reflecting moonlight. Sometimes she remembered a voice promising she would never face darkness alone. Every morning those memories faded beneath alarm clocks, unpaid bills, and ordinary life. By late afternoon, the clouds grew darker as Amelia changed into her grocery store uniform. She caught her reflection in the employee break room mirror and sighed. The sweatshirt concealed her pregnancy well enough, but not forever. Soon everyone would know. Soon questions would come. She adjusted her name tag, tied back her chestnut hair, and forced herself to smile before stepping onto the sales floor. She had no idea that somewhere beyond the human world, ancient bloodlines had already begun to stir, or that every heartbeat inside her echoed through a kingdom hidden from mortal eyes, carrying a message that would awaken someone who had spent centuries believing he would never have a family again. The evening rush arrived in waves, filling the grocery store with the familiar chorus of shopping carts, children asking for candy, and cash registers chiming without pause. Amelia moved quietly between the aisles, scanning products and replacing empty shelves with practiced efficiency. She smiled whenever customers thanked her, even though her lower back ached from standing since before dawn. Every now and then she paused just long enough to rest one hand against her stomach. The tiny life growing inside her seemed unusually active today, almost as if it sensed something she could not. "Easy there," she whispered with a tired smile. "We still have 3 hours left." A little girl passing with her father looked up at Amelia and grinned. "Your baby is happy," she said matter-of-factly before skipping away. Amelia blinked in surprise. She had not realized anyone could tell. She instinctively pulled her loose sweatshirt forward and continued working, hoping no one else had noticed. At exactly 6:15 in the evening, the automatic doors slid open again. Cool autumn air drifted inside, followed by a burst of laughter that echoed farther than it should have. Amelia looked up only for a moment before immediately wishing she had not. Jason Brooks walked through the entrance wearing an expensive jacket and the same confident smile that had once convinced her he would always protect her. Beside him was a stylish woman carrying designer shopping bags, her polished appearance turning heads as they entered. Jason had not changed much during the past year. If anything, success had made him even more certain that the world revolved around him. Amelia quietly lowered her eyes and hoped they would pass without noticing her. Fate had different plans. Jason spotted her almost instantly. His smile widened with unmistakable amusement as he nudged the woman beside him. Together, they changed direction and walked directly toward the aisle where Amelia was organizing cereal boxes. She focused on her work, pretending to compare product labels, but their footsteps stopped only a few feet away. "Well," Jason said loudly enough for nearby shoppers to hear. "Look who finally crawled out of hiding." Amelia slowly turned and offered a polite nod. "Hello, Jason." His companion looked Amelia up and down with open curiosity before glancing back at Jason. He chuckled as though sharing a private joke. "I almost did not recognize you." His eyes settled on the oversized sweatshirt. "Life has not been too kind, has it?" Amelia answered calmly. "I am doing fine. I hope you are too." Her quiet response seemed to disappoint him. He had expected anger, regret, perhaps even tears. Instead, he found only dignity, and somehow that irritated him more. Around them, several shoppers slowed their carts, sensing an uncomfortable conversation unfolding. Amelia wished only to finish her shift and go home. She reached for another box, but Jason stepped slightly closer, still smiling as though this encounter were entertaining. Before she could move away, the tiny heartbeat beneath her sweatshirt suddenly grew stronger. She froze for just an instant as warmth spread gently across her stomach. At that exact same moment, far beyond the human world, beneath towering stone arches carved centuries before the first American colony ever existed, Vampire King Lucian Ashford abruptly stopped speaking in the middle of a royal council meeting. Every conversation inside the great chamber died at once. His silver eyes lifted toward the distant horizon, and for the first time in hundreds of years, the ancient king felt the unmistakable pull of his own blood calling across impossible distance. Amelia forced herself to keep her voice steady. "I have work to do, Jason." She reached for another box of cereal, carefully placing it on the shelf, hoping that simple act would end the conversation. Instead, Jason folded his arms and leaned casually against the shopping cart as though he had all the time in the world. "Still working 2 jobs?" he asked with a laugh. "I guess some people never move up." His companion smiled politely but said nothing, clearly enjoying the attention he was attracting. Several nearby shoppers exchanged uncomfortable glances before pretending to study products they had no intention of buying. Amelia refused to give him the reaction he wanted. "Everyone works hard in different ways," she answered softly. "There is nothing wrong with honest work." Jason shook his head with exaggerated disappointment. "You always said things like that. That was your problem. No ambition." He looked her up and down once more, his eyes lingering on the oversized sweatshirt. "You have changed a lot." Amelia instinctively crossed her arms, protecting the life growing beneath the loose fabric. She had promised herself long ago that no one would make her feel ashamed again. Not today. Not ever. Jason noticed the movement and smirked. "You know, when I first saw you, I almost thought you were expecting a baby." He laughed before continuing. "But then I remembered you would probably tell me something like that just to get sympathy." His girlfriend let out a small laugh, unsure whether she should join in. Amelia took a slow breath. "My personal life is not your concern." Her calm reply only encouraged him. "Come on, Amelia. Relax. We used to know everything about each other." He looked around at the growing audience. "Everybody changes after a breakup. I just did not expect." He paused dramatically before saying with a grin, "You look like life has been feeding you a little too well lately." A few people lowered their eyes, embarrassed for her. An elderly woman quietly frowned at Jason, but remained silent. Amelia felt heat rise to her cheeks, not from humiliation, but from the overwhelming desire to walk away without creating a scene. She gently rested one hand over her stomach beneath the sweatshirt. Almost instantly, the tiny heartbeat answered with another firm kick, stronger than before. The warmth spreading through her body returned, calming her racing thoughts. It felt almost protective, as though the child somehow understood every word being spoken. Jason noticed the subtle movement and laughed again. Seriously? Do not tell me I guessed right. Amelia looked directly into his eyes for the first time. There was no anger in her expression, only quiet strength. Some things are too precious to explain to people who would never understand them. Her words landed with unexpected weight. Even Jason seemed briefly caught off guard before forcing another confident smile. Still dramatic, I see. Before Amelia could answer, every light inside the grocery store flickered once, then twice. Cash registers briefly powered down before immediately restarting. Refrigeration units hummed louder for a single second, and every digital clock reset itself before correcting the time. Customers looked around in confusion. Employees checked the ceiling, assuming a power fluctuation had passed through the building. None of them noticed that Amelia's unborn child had become perfectly still. Far beyond the city, deep within the hidden halls of Ashford Citadel, ancient crimson crystals embedded in the castle walls suddenly illuminated one after another. Royal guards stopped where they stood. Elder scholars abandoned centuries-old manuscripts. High Priest Aldrin slowly lifted his trembling hands toward the glowing ceiling. His voice barely rose above a whisper. The heir has awakened. Across the vast throne chamber, King Lucian Ashford closed his eyes for only a heartbeat before opening them again. The silver within them had transformed into brilliant molten gold, and every immortal present instinctively lowered their heads, knowing that something long believed impossible had finally begun. Silence settled over the grocery store for only a few seconds, yet to Amelia it felt strangely different, as though the air itself had become heavier. Customers resumed shopping, employees laughed nervously about the brief power fluctuation, and the ordinary rhythm of the evening slowly returned. Only Amelia remained still. The warmth beneath her hand had faded, replaced by a calm that felt almost impossible to describe. Her baby was no longer kicking wildly. Instead, the tiny heartbeat seemed perfectly steady, strong, almost peaceful. Across the hidden kingdom, however, nothing was peaceful. King Lucian Ashford descended the marble steps of his throne without speaking. Every member of the royal council instinctively stepped aside, their expressions shifting from confusion to disbelief. For centuries, they had studied prophecies carved into stone older than memory itself. They had searched continents, kingdoms, and generations for the royal bloodline that had vanished into the human world. Every search had ended in failure. Every hope had eventually faded. Until now. High Priest Aldrin carefully approached the throne with an ancient crystal tablet resting in both hands. The surface glowed with delicate golden lines that had remained dark for more than 300 years. They now pulsed like living veins. "Your Majesty," Aldrin whispered, struggling to steady his voice. "The blood beacon has awakened." Lucian did not look at the artifact. His eyes remained fixed on the distant horizon beyond the towering windows. "I know." Another elder cautiously stepped forward. "The signal is stronger than anything recorded in our archives. The child has already formed a complete royal bond." A quiet murmur spread through the chamber. Some faces reflected hope. Others revealed fear. Queen mothers had once given birth to heirs capable of preserving peace among vampire houses. But history also remembered the chaos that followed whenever rival factions discovered the existence of a newborn heir. Lucian finally spoke. "Locate them." The command was calm, yet every word carried absolute authority. A younger council member hesitated before answering. "We can sense the child, but the mother's location remains hidden. It is as though someone or something has shielded her from every spell." Lucian slowly closed his eyes again. The invisible connection pulling at his heart had become clearer. He could not see her face, yet he sensed exhaustion, kindness, and unwavering determination. Above all, he sensed fear that did not belong to the child. His expression hardened. "She believes she is alone." No one answered. They all understood what that meant. Somewhere in the human world, the future Queen of Ashford had been surviving without protection while carrying the last living heir of the oldest vampire bloodline. Back inside the grocery store, Amelia quietly returned to stocking shelves, determined to finish her shift before thinking about everything that had happened. The uncomfortable encounter with Jason had finally ended after his girlfriend suggested they continue shopping elsewhere. As they disappeared around the corner, Jason glanced back once, puzzled by Amelia's unexpected confidence. She should have looked defeated. Instead, She somehow seemed stronger than when he had first arrived. Amelia ignored him completely. An elderly customer approached with a warm smile and gently placed a carton of milk into her cart. "Young lady," she said softly, "whatever burden you are carrying, do not let anyone convince you that kindness is weakness." Amelia blinked in surprise. "Thank you." The woman smiled again before walking away into the next aisle. Amelia watched her disappear, wondering why those simple words felt so important. At that exact moment, outside the store, a convoy of sleek black vehicles quietly entered the parking lot without sirens, without flashing lights, and without drawing unnecessary attention. Their polished windows reflected the fading evening sky as each vehicle stopped with perfect precision. The doors remained closed for only a heartbeat before several tall figures dressed in dark tailored coats stepped onto the pavement in complete silence. Inside the lead vehicle, King Lucian Ashford lifted his gaze toward the brightly lit grocery store entrance. Without speaking a single word, he opened the door and stepped into the human world, guided only by the heartbeat he had waited centuries to hear. The automatic doors slid open with a soft whisper as cool evening air drifted through the entrance. No one paid much attention at first. Customers continued comparing prices, children reached for colorful cereal boxes, and cashiers greeted people with practiced smiles. The tall man who entered did not demand attention. He simply carried it with him. Dressed in a perfectly tailored black overcoat, Lucian Ashford walked with calm, measured steps that somehow silenced every conversation within a few yards of him. His pale face remained composed, his silver eyes quietly searching, following an invisible connection that grew stronger with every heartbeat. Several men dressed in dark suits entered behind him but remained near the entrance, never speaking, never interfering. They watched the surroundings with respectful distance rather than intimidation. Amelia was placing canned soup onto the lowest shelf when another gentle kick made her pause. She smiled despite the long day. "I know," she whispered beneath her breath. "I'm almost finished." She stood carefully, brushing a loose strand of chestnut hair behind her ear, completely unaware that someone had already found her. Lucian stopped at the end of the aisle. For a brief moment, time seemed to slow. Everything the blood beacon had revealed suddenly became real. She looked exactly as the ancient bond had promised. Ordinary clothes, tired eyes, kindness that had survived hardship instead of being erased by it. There was nothing royal about her appearance. Yet the child she carried radiated a presence older than kingdoms themselves. Lucian felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Relief. Amelia sensed someone watching her and turned. Their eyes met across the aisle. She had never seen the stranger before, yet an unfamiliar feeling settled over her heart. He did not look at her the way other people often did. There was no curiosity, no judgment, no pity. His expression held only quiet concern, as though he had been searching for her for a very long time. Before either of them spoke, the unborn child suddenly moved again. This time the movement was so strong that Amelia instinctively rested both hands over her stomach. She inhaled sharply, surprised by the sudden warmth spreading through her entire body. Lucian's breathing caught for the first time in hundreds of years. The invisible bond between father and child became unmistakable. He could feel the tiny heartbeat matching his own ancient rhythm. The royal bloodline had recognized him. Amelia looked down in confusion before glancing back toward the stranger. "I am sorry," she said politely. "Do we know each other?" Lucian answered with gentle honesty. "Not yet." His voice was calm, deep, and strangely familiar, carrying a quiet reassurance that immediately eased the nervous tension she had been carrying all evening. Before Amelia could respond, another customer accidentally bumped a shopping cart while turning the corner. A large package slipped from the top shelf, falling toward Amelia. She instinctively stepped back, but before it could reach her, Lucian moved with effortless speed. To everyone else, it appeared as though he had simply reacted quickly. He caught the package with one hand before it touched the floor and carefully placed it back onto the shelf. "Please be careful," he said softly, not to Amelia, but to the customer, whose face immediately turned red with embarrassment. "I am so sorry," the man replied. "I did not even see it." Lucian simply nodded. Amelia stared at him, surprised less by what he had done than by how naturally he had protected both her and the stranger from an awkward accident. There was no anger in his voice, only quiet. Kindness. At the front of the store, Jason noticed the unfamiliar man speaking with Amelia. His confident smile slowly faded as he watched the elegant stranger standing beside the woman he had dismissed only minutes earlier. Something about the man's calm presence unsettled him in a way he could not explain. Meanwhile, inside the lead vehicle outside, High Priest Aldrin quietly closed his eyes and whispered to the royal guards, "The bond is complete. His Majesty has found both the mother and the heir." Jason abandoned his shopping cart without realizing it and walked back toward the aisle, unable to ignore the strange feeling settling in his chest. The elegant stranger standing beside Amelia looked nothing like anyone Jason had ever met. There was no expensive watch displayed for attention, no flashy jewelry, no loud confidence demanding admiration. Instead, the man carried himself with effortless composure, as though the world naturally adjusted to his presence rather than the other way around. Even the shoppers passing nearby unconsciously lowered their voices. Amelia accepted the package Lucian had saved from falling and smiled politely. "Thank you." Most people would have just let it hit the floor. Lucian's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Some things are too valuable to leave to chance." His words seemed simple, yet they carried a meaning Amelia could not quite understand. Another gentle movement came from within her, stronger than before. She instinctively rested her hand against her stomach again. Lucian noticed immediately. Without taking another step, he quietly asked, "May I?" Amelia blinked, confused by the unexpected question. "May you what?" His silver eyes never left hers. "May I greet my child?" The world seemed to stop. Amelia stared at him, convinced she had misheard. Jason laughed loudly from several feet away. "Your child?" His voice echoed across the aisle, drawing even more attention from nearby customers. "That is a pretty bold line, buddy." Several people looked between the two men, trying to understand what was happening. Amelia opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. She had told no one. No medical record connected the mysterious father to her pregnancy. No photograph existed. She had spent months convincing herself that the unforgettable night beneath the moon had been nothing more than an impossible dream. Yet the stranger's calm certainty unsettled every explanation she had built. Lucian did not acknowledge Jason. His attention remained entirely on Amelia. "I know this sounds impossible," he said gently, "but your heart already knows I am telling the truth." Amelia searched his face for arrogance, deception, or manipulation. She found none. There was only sincerity and an unexpected sadness, as though he regretted every day they had spent apart without even knowing it. The unborn child suddenly kicked with remarkable strength. Amelia gasped softly. Before she could lose her balance, Lucian extended his hand, stopping just inches away. "Only if you are comfortable," he said quietly. His patience surprised her even more than his words. After several long seconds, Amelia slowly nodded. Lucian carefully placed his open palm against the outside of her sweatshirt. The instant his hand touched the gentle curve of her pregnancy, every light inside the grocery store brightened for a single heartbeat. Digital screens flickered. Refrigerators hummed with renewed energy. A warm current seemed to pass through the building like the first sunlight after a storm. Several customers looked around in confusion, unable to explain the strange sensation that had washed over them. Amelia felt it too. The warmth surrounding her became peaceful instead of overwhelming. Tears unexpectedly filled her eyes, not from fear, but from relief she had never expected to experience. The baby responded with 3 joyful kicks in rapid succession, each one stronger than the last. Lucian smiled for the first time in centuries. It was not the smile of a king. It was the smile of a father hearing his child answer him for the very first time. Jason's laughter disappeared completely. He watched the impossible connection unfold before his eyes, unable to explain why the atmosphere around them felt so different. Outside, every member of the royal escort quietly bowed their heads. High Priest Aldrin looked toward the evening sky and whispered with profound gratitude. "The future of the Ashford bloodline lives, and for the first time in 300 years, our king is no longer standing alone." No one inside the grocery store understood what had just happened, but everyone felt that something extraordinary had passed through the room. The warm sensation faded almost as quickly as it had appeared, leaving only silence in its wake. Amelia slowly looked down at Lucian's hand resting gently over the life she carried. Her baby had never responded like this before. Every movement felt purposeful, almost joyful. She looked back into Lucian's eyes, searching for an explanation that ordinary words could provide. Instead, she found quiet gratitude. "Who are you?" she whispered. Lucian withdrew his hand with the same care he had shown from the beginning. "My name is Lucian Ashford." He paused for only a heartbeat. "And the child you are carrying is my son." The words settled into the air with remarkable calm. Amelia did not immediately answer. Part of her wanted to dismiss the impossible claim, yet another part remembered the moonlit night she had spent trying to forget. She remembered the stranger whose kindness had never matched the stories people told about powerful men. She remembered silver eyes that seemed to hold centuries of loneliness. The memories she had buried beneath months of ordinary life suddenly returned with startling clarity. Jason, however, broke the silence with another laugh. "This keeps getting better." He folded his arms and shook his head. "So now some rich guy walks in claiming to be the father? Amelia, you really expect anyone to believe this?" Lucian slowly turned toward him for the first time. His expression remained perfectly composed. There was no anger in his face, no trace of wounded pride, only calm certainty. "Belief is not required for truth to exist," he said quietly. Jason rolled his eyes. "Listen, I do not know what game you are playing, but you picked the wrong woman. She has nothing. No money, no connections, no reason for anyone like you to even notice her." Lucian's gaze shifted back toward Amelia before he answered. "That is precisely why. She matters." Amelia lowered her eyes, overwhelmed by emotions she could no longer organize. She had spent months believing she would raise her child alone. She had accepted every sacrifice without complaint because there had been no other choice. Yet this stranger spoke as though every difficult day she had endured had been seen by someone all along. Outside the store, High Priest Aldrin quietly received a message through an ancient crystal carried by one of the royal guards. His face grew solemn. He immediately approached the entrance but remained outside, respecting the king's wish to speak first. "Your Majesty," he said softly through the enchanted communication, "the council has confirmed the prophecy. There are already those who will seek the heir once the awakening becomes known." Lucian listened without changing his expression. "Increase the guardians around this location. Quietly. No human is to feel threatened." "As you command." The connection faded. Inside the store, Amelia noticed several well-dressed men respectfully waiting near the entrance without interfering. None of them appeared impatient. None of them even looked directly at her. It was as though they had one purpose only, to ensure that nothing disturbed the conversation taking place. She looked back at Lucian. "If what you are saying is true," she asked carefully, "why did you not come sooner?" For the first time since entering the store, genuine regret crossed Lucian's face. "Because until today, I did not know you needed me." His answer carried no excuses, only honesty. Amelia felt tears gather again, but this time she did not look away. Before either of them could continue, the unborn child gave another gentle kick, softer than before, almost like a peaceful reminder that despite the confusion surrounding them, one undeniable truth had already connected two lives that destiny had kept apart for far too long. Amelia lowered her gaze, gently brushing away the tears that had gathered in the corners of her eyes. The grocery store around them slowly returned to its ordinary rhythm, yet nothing about the moment felt ordinary anymore. The sounds of shopping carts, distant conversations, and barcode scanners seemed strangely far away. For the first time in months, she no longer felt completely alone. Lucian remained quietly beside her, giving her the space to think instead of demanding an answer. His patience spoke louder than promises ever could. Jason finally stepped forward again, frustration replacing the confidence he had carried only minutes earlier. "Enough of this," he said with an uneasy laugh. "Whoever you are, this has gone far enough. Amelia does not need another fantasy. She needs reality." Lucian slowly turned toward him. His voice remained calm and respectful. "Reality is exactly what I have come to offer." Jason shook his head. "You expect everyone to believe you just appeared out of nowhere because of a baby?" Lucian answered without hesitation. "I came because my family was finally found." Jason opened his mouth to argue again, but the words never came. Something in Lucian's unwavering certainty made every sarcastic remark feel smaller before it was even spoken. Amelia looked between them before quietly asking, family. Lucian nodded. For centuries I believed I would never have one again. His eyes briefly rested on her before returning to the child she carried. Our son is the last living heir of my bloodline. Amelia struggled to understand the weight behind those words. She had imagined countless futures for her child, but never one connected to ancient kingdoms or forgotten promises. Why is he so important? She asked softly. Lucian's expression grew thoughtful. Because there are some families that protect power. He paused before adding, mine exists to protect peace. Without an heir, everything my ancestors built would eventually disappear. Amelia noticed there was no pride in his voice, only responsibility. Outside, High Priest Aldrin received another report from the Royal Scouts positioned throughout the city. He quietly entered the grocery store, stopping several yards away before bowing respectfully. Nearby customers assumed he was simply greeting an important executive. None of them could imagine they were witnessing a tradition older than recorded history. Your Majesty, Aldrin said calmly, the estate has been prepared. The physicians, nursery, and household staff await your command. Amelia looked toward the elderly man in surprise. He smiled warmly before placing one hand over his heart. My lady, we have waited a very long time to meet you. Amelia instinctively stepped back, overwhelmed by the unexpected respect being shown to her. Please, she said nervously. I am just an ordinary woman. Aldrin's gentle smile only grew warmer. Kindness has always been the greatest mark of true royalty. Jason stared in complete disbelief. None of this made sense anymore. The expensive vehicles outside, the disciplined men waiting in silence, the elderly gentleman addressing Lucian like a king. Even the atmosphere around Amelia seemed transformed. The woman he had dismissed as insignificant was now being treated with a level of honor he had never witnessed. Lucian turned back toward Amelia and spoke with quiet sincerity. I cannot change the months you carried this responsibility alone. I cannot return the mornings you woke before sunrise or the evenings you spent worrying about tomorrow. But if you allow me, neither you nor our son will ever face those burdens alone again. Amelia searched his face one final time. She still had questions. Countless questions. Yet every instinct she possessed told her that the man standing before her had spoken nothing but the truth since the moment they met. She slowly nodded, not as someone surrendering her future, but as someone finally allowing herself to believe that hope had found her again. Across the parking lot, the evening breeze carried the first fallen leaves of autumn across the polished stone, while far beyond the human world, the ancient bells of Ashford's citadel rang for the first time in 3 centuries, announcing that the House of Ashford finally had a future once more. The ride to Ashford Estate unfolded beneath a sky filled with quiet stars, yet Amelia barely noticed the passing streets beyond the window. Her thoughts were still inside the grocery store, replaying every impossible moment that had transformed an ordinary workday into the beginning of an entirely different life. Lucian sat beside her without interrupting. The silence. He understood that trust could never be rushed. It had to be earned, one truthful moment at a time. Every few minutes Amelia instinctively rested her hand over her stomach, smiling whenever her son answered with another gentle kick. For the first time since discovering she was pregnant, those tiny movements no longer carried uncertainty. They carried belonging. When the convoy finally reached the estate, the iron gates opened without a sound. Amelia expected an enormous castle like the ones from old fairy tales. Yet what greeted her was something even more remarkable. The sprawling stone residence stood proudly among ancient oak trees, its warm lights glowing through tall windows instead of towering over the landscape. It felt less like a fortress and more like a home that had patiently waited for someone to return. As Lucian stepped out first and offered Amelia his hand, every member of the household quietly gathered along the entrance. There were no loud celebrations, no extravagant ceremony. Each person simply placed a hand over the heart and bowed with sincere respect. Amelia looked at Lucian in confusion. They are greeting you, he explained softly, not because of who they believe you should become, but because of who you already are. Amelia lowered her eyes, humbled by kindness she did not feel she had earned. Before she could answer, another powerful kick came from within her. She smiled instinctively. He seems happy. Lucian's own smile returned. He recognizes home. Inside the estate, warm fireplaces glowed against polished stone walls while family portraits stretched back through generations. Yet one hallway remained empty except for a single unfinished frame hanging above the mantel. Amelia paused before it. "Why is this one blank?" Lucian walked beside her and quietly answered, "It has waited 3 centuries for the next generation." Amelia gently touched the edge of the empty frame without speaking. She suddenly understood that this family had not simply lost time. They had endured centuries of hope without certainty. Upstairs, the room prepared for her overlooked peaceful gardens where moonlight reflected across a quiet lake. Fresh flowers rested on the windowsill beside children's books and a small wooden rocking chair that looked lovingly handcrafted. Nothing inside the room felt extravagant. Everything felt thoughtful. Amelia turned slowly toward Lucian. "You prepared all of this today?" He shook his head. "The room was prepared many years ago. We simply never stopped believing someone would one day need it." Amelia felt tears return, but this time they carried gratitude instead of loneliness. As midnight approached, the estate gradually settled into silence. Amelia finally rested beneath soft blankets, exhaustion overcoming the emotions of the day. Outside her window, the moon rose higher above the gardens. Then, without warning, the unborn child stirred once more. A gentle golden glow briefly shimmered beneath Amelia's hands before fading into the quiet darkness. Hundreds of miles beneath the estate, inside the oldest chamber of Ashford Citadel, an ancient stone monument that had remained dormant since before the founding of the kingdom suddenly awakened. Delicate lines of golden light spread across its weathered surface like dawn touching frozen earth. High Priest Aldrin fell to one knee, his voice barely more than a whisper. "The first bloodline has accepted its heir." At that exact moment, Lucian quietly looked toward the night sky from the balcony outside Amelia's room. He placed one hand over his heart as the invisible bond between father and son grew stronger than ever before. A peaceful smile crossed his face while the ancient stars reflected in his silver eyes. After centuries of waiting, he finally understood a truth greater than any throne or kingdom. Even the oldest kings discover that the greatest legacy is not power, but the family they are willing to protect.